Hey students, so you're doing your second quiz corrections, and in this problem it says for all triangles XYZ where side XZ is longer than YZ, here's XZ, and here's YZ, such that the triangle shown below, which of the following statements is true? And so if we're looking at these two angles, what I know is that there's a relationship between the sides and the angles. So for example, if I'm looking at YZ, I know there's a relationship with angle X. And if I'm looking at XZ, then I know there's a relationship with angle Y. And the relationship is such that if XZ is longer than YZ, then I know angle Y is going to be larger than angle X. Again, if XZ is longer than YZ, then I know angle Y is larger than angle X. Because of that, the answer, the measure of angle X is always less than angle Y, is the answer that must be true. Okay, in problem number 2, they ask us what is equivalent to this expression. So you needed to be able to simplify and combine the pieces of this expression. So the square root of 48 breaks down as 16 times 3. So you have the square root of 16 and the square root of 3. You have 4 square root of 3 is what you get out of there. For the 147, this is 49 times 3. So you get the square root of 49 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 49 is 7, so you get 7 square root of 3. And for the last one, we know what the square root of 9 is, so the last one is really just 2 times 3 because the square root of 9 is 3, so we get plus 6 at the end. So if we're looking here, because these two have the same radical, I just add their coefficients, 4 and 7, so I get 11 radical 3, and then the plus 6 stays outside. I cannot combine the 6 with the 11 because the 11 is telling me how many of the radical 3's I have. The 6 is just whole 6's by itself. So looking at our answer here, we can see that our answer is G. So in problem number 3, they say what is the perimeter in inches of the isosceles right triangle shown below if the hypotenuse is 8 square root 2 inches long. And so there's a couple things you need to know to be successful in this problem, and one of those things is that you need to be able to identify the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always opposite of the 90-degree angle. This is 8 square root of 2. You also need to remember what isosceles means. So isosceles means two sides are the same. And so this kind of ties back to problem number 1. If we know these two sides are the same, then we know that the two angles on the sides are the same. And if we have a 90-degree angle, then these other two angles have to be 45 and 45. So once we establish that from the question, we know we have a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle. And we know that the pattern here is that we have a leg, and then we have the leg times the square root of 2. So our legs here are these pieces, these equal pieces. And so if I look at what they gave me for the hypotenuse, which was 8 square root of 2, I can clearly see that my leg must equal 8. So if I don't clearly see that, I can set up an equation. L square root of 2 is equal to 8 square root of 2. I can divide square root of 2 to both sides. So cancel, cancel, and now I know my leg is equal to 8. Okay, so that is just the first part of the question because they're asking us to use this information to find the perimeter. So again, the perimeter is when you add up all three sides together. So I have 8 plus 8 plus 8 square root of 2. So again, these two I can combine, they're just whole numbers, but I cannot combine the 8 square root of 2 with the 16 because this is telling me I have 8 of the square roots of 2. It's not just 8 by itself. Okay, so our final answer here would be E. Okay, so let's take a look at problem number 4. It says in the figure below, CD is an altitude. So here they let us know that this is the altitude of the right triangle, of the triangle ABC, and they give us triangle ABC here. It says if the lengths are shown in inches, how many inches long is DC? So this part's a little confusing. I'm not sure why they wrote it one way and then another way, but they're talking about the same altitude. They want to know the length of this altitude. So this question is very similar to problems we did in class, but it's also pretty different because it's labeled differently. But we're going to start off the same way. We're going to try to make a similarity statement between two triangles. And so again, I always like to start at the 90-degree angle because it makes it clear for me where I'm starting on one of the smaller triangles. So I'm going to start, I'm going to go from C to A to B. So I'm going to talk about triangle CAB. Triangle CAB. Okay. And because I'm starting at my 90-degree angle, I'm going to look at this triangle here, this smaller one. And I'm going to start at my 90-degree angle, and I want to go to the short side first because I went the short side first here. So it seems my short side would go from D to C. So this is similar to triangle DC. So DC, and then I go BD. So DCB would be my next triangle. And so now using this, I can make my ratios. I know CA is proportional to DC. I know AB is proportional to CB. And just in case I need it, I know BC is proportional to BD. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in what I know, and I want to keep my eye on this DC because that's what I want to solve for in this problem. So CA is 6 inches. We don't know DC, so that's my X. AB is 10 inches, and CB is 8 inches. So it turns out I don't need this last one to do this problem, I just need these here. So I'm going to cross multiply here, and I get 48 is equal to 10x. So if I divide by my 10, I find that x is equal to 4.8. So if we look at our answer choices, that's actually answer choice F. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. It says a large pine tree was struck by lightning and fell as shown in the diagram. What was the original height of the pine tree before it was struck by lightning? Round to the nearest hundredths. Okay. So they want to know how tall this tree was before it was struck by lightning. In order to know that, I would need to take this length right here that fallen and bring it back up standing up, right? So in order to do that, I first need to figure out what this length is. So I have a right triangle. I have two legs, so this looks like a job for Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Let's see, ABC here. So if I plug these in, I get 13 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. And that's 169 plus 64, which gives us, let's see, a 3, 233. So we know C squared is equal to 233, and if you take the square root here, you'll find C is equal to 15.3 if you round it, okay? So a lot of us made this mistake right here, where we got to this point and we saw it in our answer choices and we decided that was our final answer. I even made this mistake when I first looked at this problem when I was going over this quiz, okay? But that just tells us how much of the tree fell down. It doesn't tell us how tall the tree was to begin with. In order to find that, I need to take this answer that I just got and I need to add it to this 8 feet so that I figure out how tall the tree was before it fell down. So if we add it to this 8 feet, we get 23.3. And if you look at your answer choices, that is answer D. So if you got answer B, let's take a look at problem number 6. It says in the right triangle below, how long is the side EF? Here's EF. This is a right triangle, and we have the hypotenuse, so that's C, and let's say we have A and we don't have B. So if I were to set this up, right, this is what we would have. And so for A squared, I'd have 7t squared. For B squared, it's just B squared. For C squared, it's 21 squared. Okay, So it looks like if I look at my answer choices, it looks like they're not evaluating any of these. So I'm not going to evaluate any of these either. I'm just going to try to get B by itself and leave everything else alone. So this is one of the ways that you can use your answer choices to kind of guide what kind of work you're doing, right? If I see that I don't have any clear answers here, I'm not going to search for a clear like decimal answer here. I'm just going to try to make it look like this and see which one matches. So I'm going to take away 17 squared from both sides, and that leaves me with b squared is equal to 21 squared minus 17 squared. So some of you did get to this point and you stopped and you said that your answer was h. This is incorrect because b is just the side length, it's just b. It's not b squared. So in order to really finish this problem, we need to take the square root of both sides, and we end up with b is equal to the square root of 21 squared minus 17 squared. And that is answer F.